It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Monday, Gary, hello.
Hello, I'm doing good. Before you even ask, I'm doing good.
Okay. Well, good. I guess that out of the way.
Everything is hunky-dory.
Yeah, all right.
So, yeah, here we go here. I'm just reading Wall Street Journal. Joe Biden and the 51 spies of 2020. We're now learning his campaign helped gin up the disinformation about Hunter's laptop. Think about this now. All the major disinformation, the major stories of disinformation, and this is the incredible thing, Democrats believe they have the high ground on this, on disinformation.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why they're always promoting we need to have a disinformation board to stop all this disinformation. And all the biggest stories that we have talked about over the last 6 years have all been disinformation that has come from the Hillary campaign and now apparently the Biden campaign.
Yes. That's where Blinken was at the time.
The House Judiciary and Intelligence Committee released portions of a deposition transcript exposing the origins of the statements from 51 former U.S. spies declaring that Hunter's laptop had all the classic earmarks of a Russian disinformation operation. The admission came from Mike Morrell, former deputy CIA director under Barack Obama. The letter served its political purpose of giving the media and Joe Biden the opening to dismiss the New York Post laptop story as Russian disinformation. It turns out the Biden campaign was behind the letter. Mr. Morrell told Congress under oath that he received a phone call from Antony Blinken, now Secretary of State, on October 17, 2020, 3 days after the Post published emails from Hunter's laptop. Mr. Blinken was then senior advisor to the campaign and is now Secretary of State. According to the letter the House committee sent to Mr. Blinken last week, Mr. Morrell said the call was couched as simply gathering Morrell's reaction to the Post story, yet it set in motion the events that led to the issuance of the public statement. Committee question to Mr. Morrell. Prior to Mr. Blinken's call, you did not have any intent to write this statement? Morrell, I did not. The letter says Morrell also explained that the Biden campaign helped to strategize about the public release of the statement. Mr. Morrell said he then contacted an aide to former CIA Director John Brennan to say the Biden campaign wanted the statement to go to a particular reporter at the Washington Post first, and that he should send the statement to the campaign when he sent the letter to the reporter. Mr. Morrell acknowledged he had two goals with the statement: to share our concerns with the American people and to help Vice President Biden win the election. All of this took place shortly after the final presidential debate, and Mr. Biden pointed to the Gang of 51's statement that his campaign helped to generate as proof that Hunter's laptop was phony. Look, there are 50 former national intelligence folks who say that what this Trump is accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that all of this has the characteristics. 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Mr. Morrell told the committee that following the debate, Biden campaign chair and now senior White House aide Steve Ricchetti called to thank him for the statement. No doubt the Biden campaign had, in essence, generated its own disinformation, marshaling the authority of a supposedly nonpartisan intelligence veterans to discredit a story that was accurate about laptop emails that were authentic. The committees are seeking more information from Mr. Blinken about the Biden campaign's role, and the public deserves answers. Statement signers like former Obama Director of National Intelligence James Clapper have since admitted they had no evidence to make their disinformation claims, and Mr. Clapper claims the media distorted their views. No, the press did precisely what Mr. Blinken and the 51 spooks wanted. use a letter to discredit the Hunter laptop and the information on it that raised questions about the Biden family business with foreigners. Intelligence officials, former as well as current, have a particular duty not to spread disinformation because they have access to classified information that the public can't check. The press overwhelmingly went along with the false Biden campaign claims because it wanted Mr. Biden to win. These 51 officials have done more damage to the credibility of the CIA and FBI than anything Donald Trump has said. Ditto for the complicit media. You think about it, and we've talked about the whole Russia collusion thing that went on for years.
Yeah,
that was
sure.
Disinformation created, paid for, and created by the Hillary campaign. We know that.
Yep.
And now the push to fight back against the true story of the Hunter Biden laptop, which went, and again, I mean, we mentioned this last week. One member of the House, Democrat member of the House, I can't think of who it was at the moment, was screaming that Hunter Biden isn't president. It's not about Hunter Biden, and everybody knows that. It's about influence peddling and enriching the Biden family to tens of millions of dollars over the years, including when the president now was vice president. Started way, 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 way back then. That's what it's about. It's about influence peddling, and we all know it. And that's why they weren't scared because, if it's about Hunter Biden, obviously anybody goes, Hunter Biden? Okay, money goes right there.
The letter was weak to begin with, but now to learn that it came directly from the Biden campaign, is no big surprise, no shocker. This is exactly how the left operates.
Why would you say the letter is weak? I'm not sure I understand the context.
The letter from the top officials, remember how they phrased it. It appears that this is Russian disinformation. This smells like Russian disinformation.
Right. Well, I agree. The evidence was weak, but it was extremely effective. As a political statement, it was extremely effective. It was I'm not so sure I can measure that. It legitimized the fact that the Democrats and the media were saying that this was disinformation.
I think for those who already believed it, who already believed there was nothing there, yeah. For those of us who saw right through it from the beginning, it was not.
Right.
And so it was weak from the beginning. And this entire thing is it's proof once again how the left will operate. Once again, they will make it up. And they won't just make it up. They'll do what Hillary did, what Biden did, and what the future Democrats are still today willing to do. They'll use everything in their playbook, and they'll throw it at you. And they'll come at you. How dare you show up at a teacher's conference meeting and complain about anything? You're all of a sudden a terrorist. We'll weaponize everything and anything we want to. We'll come after you if you ask a question. We'll come after you if you speak out against our agenda. And we'll use every single thing within our playbook and power to bring everything we can to the game. And by the way, they knew this because even 4 years in, Donald Trump was still an amateur. This goes back to exactly what Comey said when they talked about sending FBI agents to talk to his incoming or his brand new national security advisor. We know these guys were amateurs. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know that they were supposed to go through White House counsel when they talked to Michael Flynn. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were playing the system against somebody who was not part of the system before. And they did it in the end. Over and over again, they use everything within their reach and weaponize it to the fullest extent. This is who they are. And if you think they won't come after you, you're wrong. They'll come after Trump. They'll go after any presidential candidate. I don't know what they'll throw at someone like a Ron DeSantis because he's a real threat to them. everyone here, and here's the problem. The next conservative president has access to so much information they can open the entire book and read it. There are very few places to hide. And all along, they have designed something that they believe, honestly, is too big to fail. That you can't let anyone on the right in because, and if they are even close, there's no telling what they would throw at a Ron DeSantis or whoever the nominee happens to be next year. They're hoping it'll be Trump because they can keep up the same game. They won't have to come up with something new. But if it's Ron DeSantis, expect that they'll do the exact same thing. They'll weaponize it to the fullest extent. And now, Biden is a sitting president. He has the full power of his administration to weaponize it. And if you need any examples, you just simply haven't been paying attention. From Blinken to the current attorney general, every single thing is about building a firewall around this president and keeping it there and building a firewall around their agenda. And if you speak up against it, no matter who you are, you're going down. They're coming after you.
A couple of interesting points that you didn't hear. You know, I just mentioned it to you in our pre-show meeting that you heard absolutely nothing from Merrick Garland. Usually if something like this comes up, he'll call a press conference immediately and come out. Nothing. Nothing from Merrick Garland. Nothing from in fact, a State Department spokesperson was asked and said, well, it doesn't involve the Department of State. Of course it does.
How it doesn't?
It's here. And so there's no response at all. And in fact, we'll have some of the news reporting from the mainstream media that was pounding on this. And I really think that the whole age thing that started over the weekend about Biden, all of a sudden everybody was on that in the Sunday morning news show. His age really is part of the panic of what's going on here with the political dirty tricks and the corruption with, influence peddling. I think most Democrats look at this and go, whoa. And there's a few Democrats out there when they were asking about his age. Well, we think that he's right on top of everything. The New York Times, even the Wall Street Journal started it, but then also the New York. Well, actually, they didn't. I think the New York Times last Thursday had just a blistering article about the fact that he's too old. But I don't think it's actually his age they're worried about. I think they view him as being extremely vulnerable. I think the Democrats think they can get away with almost anything. I think one thing that bothers them is the fact that by the time election time rolls around next year, influence peddling is going to be on the tip of everybody's tongue. And that's just something you can't win a presidential election on, especially if they've got you on crimes.
If it had been known during Anthony Blinken's confirmation hearing that he was the one who designed that letter,
he wouldn't be Secretary of State.
There's not a chance in hell he would be. Well, you already have right now, you have people calling for him to step down as a result of this. I don't know that that's going to happen. But I can darn sure tell you, he wouldn't be there if this were known then. This is exactly Jack, you can't tell him what to do. He'll keep those documents right there by that Corvette, maybe somewhere in the Corvette. Have we even checked under the hood? I mean, this is who Biden is. He's got the power, got the ultimate power, and he's wanted it from the beginning, by the way. He just wasn't good enough to get there.
And then if one of those top secret documents is what Hunter Biden used from the house and the garage to deal with the Chinese, then it may be a little red Corvette.
Yeah, it could be.
All right, that was bad. That was Hey, we got a great show ahead.
All right.
Great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle to help avoid downtime and keep your rig rolling through to next winter. When completing your spring maintenance check, don't overlook your windshield wipers. Extreme temperatures, snow, and ice can tear windshield wipers apart. Check on yours now to prepare for spring showers and avoid squinting through streaks. A general rule of thumb is to replace your wiper blades every 6 months. But if your inspection uncovers streaking, worn rubber, or damaged wiper frames, you may want to purchase a new set sooner.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella.
Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Welcome and good morning to the show. So much to talk about that happened. John Kerry saying that green energy will be more competitive if we raise prices of oil and natural gas. Goes back to what Obama said a few years back, where he said we need to skyrocket the cost of electricity, and that's the only way that you can make alternative energy work. So John Kerry stating that. Eric Adams in New York City says the city's being destroyed by the migrant crisis caused by President Biden. Wow. NBA legend Phil Jackson has not watched the NBA since 2020. Black Lives Matter. Too political.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep. And I don't know that it's, I don't know, again, for the younger audience, I'd have to look at the, what hurt what in terms of the ratings. But you can bet that the game, the presentation of the game has changed drastically, even after, keep in mind, NBA commissioner came out and said, and that was fairly early on, if you think about it. At the end of that first season where they had prominence. Yeah, we're going to kind of back off that, and then they just kind of ushered it out in terms of the visibility of Black Lives Matter in the NBA games. But the problem is when you change the game, the presentation of the game, there's a huge chunk of your audience that you're not going to win back. I don't know if the NFL, in terms of winning back the same people, their audience may grow as a result of new generations coming in and watching actively, that kind of thing, or showing up to games or whatever. That may be the case. They may, both the NBA and the NFL may continue to grow. But there are still people out there that won't go back. I have a handful of family members, I'd say two of which would watch games every Sunday for the NFL. They didn't get to watch Monday and Thursday games as much, but they watched every Sunday, and they haven't watched in years. Again, you can still grow your audience, but it's based on a new generation. And wouldn't you, I guess, my question for NFL or NBA commissioner, wouldn't you like to have everybody watching in every demographic? I would love to see the breakdown of how many people left that haven't come back. Not the overall numbers. That doesn't tell the whole story.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want. If you can't listen live overnight. Looking at this here, California winter rainfall sparks renewed gold rush. Is this just an effort for California to get people
to come back?
I saw that story. I'm like, are they trying to say there's gold in them thar hills?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that was not. I'm not assigning pronouns to the hills. By the way.
Oh,
That's just,
okay, yeah.
that's how they. I've heard that said in a Western one time. I just want to make clear on that. We
So if they would just tell us exactly where the gold is, it would save a lot of time.
yes. I saw that. I just burst out laughing. California winter rainfall sparks renewed gold rush. Really now? That's what you're trying to do to get people back? By the way, whatever gold you find, 90% of it goes to the government of California.
I thought it was 190%. I thought you actually had to pay them. Yeah. There is a guy that I follow, and one of his friends on his YouTube channel still has a claim in the Sierras. And he's older, so he doesn't get back to it, but everyone's kind of rallying around him to help him get back to his gold claim to see if he can. And back in the day, he actually did it as work, as trying to make money off of it. And obviously, these days he's retired, just trying to make whatever, just find whatever. And he was talking about this huge 6-pound nugget that was found by one guy, and he said the meltdown price was so and so. I forget what he said, and he said, but the eBay price was like more than 3 times that, what somebody actually paid on eBay for it.
Really?
Like, wow. But, yeah, I saw one, it was a survival show that I had not seen. I don't really watch the survival shows, but this one episode came up, and it was interesting, and it was, I think must have been from Discovery at one point a couple of years ago, and the guy they basically had to race to the rendezvous point. They were all put in different places, and you only have so many supplies, and then you get to the rendezvous point. You got to be there, at a certain time, and you got to survive the whole, harsh winter elements or whatever of Alaska, or spring elements actually are pretty harsh. And one guy came across an area that he knew to be rich in gold, and he stopped to do some panning and found about $300 or $400 in gold while he was just going through, while he was actually playing this competition on television. But yeah, I've always wanted to go through the process, but I don't think I could do that more than just like a vacation visit.
No.
I couldn't go and set up a claim and sit there, and because it's not the work, it's the psychology. So you find a decent sized nugget, and I don't know, I can't quantify what a decent sized nugget is, but you find something measurable, and then you never stop looking. Your mind is set on, the whole gold fever thing. Your mind is just set on finding a lot more. And you would just never leave. That would be me. I would just set up shop and, oh, no, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. There's got to be more. And I wouldn't be afraid of the work. But, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I go right back to that Clint Eastwood movie. Remember with the preacher? Remember when I can't think of the name of the movie, what that movie is. The movie where Clint Eastwood is the preacher and everybody's trying to pan for gold, and there's the one guy who's, got the big corporation that's trying to, they're all individual stakeholders, and he's trying to run them all off, and Clint Eastwood is the preacher. You know the movie. At the end, she's screaming, "Preacher, preacher!"
Yeah, probably. I'm sure I've seen it. I just don't remember it. Yeah.
You know the movie.
Yeah.
I just can't think of the name of it there. But a couple guys end up getting killed for that one.
Well, and there's another thing. I mean, if there is this new gold rush, whatever that would be in today's age, first of all, in the era of quiet quitters, how many people are we actually talking about? because it is
Yeah,
work.
that's true. Yeah.
The yield versus the work. Unless you already know what you're doing, it's just not going to be much.
No.
But good luck.
All right, so here we go. Here's the headline. High-profile Republicans call on Blinken to resign over Hunter Biden laptop letter. Two high-profile Republicans are calling for Secretary of State Blinken to resign or face impeachment charges in the wake of allegations that the Biden administration official intentionally misled the public on the Hunter Biden laptop case to help then-candidate Joe Biden win the 2020 election. Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin called on the top Biden administrative official to resign, arguing such efforts should disqualify him from leading the State Department. Let's talk about our allies who now don't trust us at all, Biggs said in an interview with Just the News. And why would they? They think we're weak, untrustworthy. How in the world can he remain our spokesperson to the world? I just don't see how he can. He should go. I think he's irreparably harmed the United States. Johnson reiterated Biggs' call for Blinken to resign, arguing that he should be impeached if he doesn't agree to step down. Wow.
There's so much to unpack here because, I don't expect Blinken to step down, but there is going to be a nonstop effort to get him in front of committees, and there should be.
And what's he going to say? Is he going to take the fifth?
This
Secretary of State taking the fifth. You can't last if you're Secretary of State taking the fifth in front of Congress. Let me play this here because I think we need to refresh people's memories of how this was used. This was, I believe, the last debate. Okay, here we go.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that...
Okay, we'll try it again here. For some reason, you get it. Of course, my computer goes on me, but that's standard operating procedure here.
Well, and there's the thing. Look, the biggest tell in that entire thing was the fact that social media was shutting down the New York Post. And we said from the beginning, the night that the New York Post story hit, we said, look, if the New York Post is wrong, if they get burned on, from their sources or whatever, then they get burned. They get burned hard on this. But if it's not, if it's true, the first question, is it really Hunter's laptop? And remember, that was denied right. No, he doesn't have a laptop. There's no laptop. There's no laptop. And it's not Hunter's laptop. They're making it up. It's all garbage, garbage, garbage. But if you were following the story, if you were actually paying attention, you could see right through everything that they were throwing out. And their entire effort to shut down the story on social media that we now know was apparent back then. Now, we didn't know that it was the FBI trying to shut, the story down on social media, that they were leading social media to shut it down, that they had basically set up shop at Twitter and then gone over to Facebook and told Zuckerberg, the whole thing. We didn't know that part of it. But we definitely knew, if you were following along, we knew there had to be something there for there to be that kind of concerted effort to shut it down. And ironically, one of the first in the media to actually acknowledge that it was a thing was Jeffrey Toobin, of all people, fully clothed on TV. He said, we don't know what to do with the Hunter Biden thing. And we said, yeah, you do. You don't know how to ignore it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but you can report it, certainly.
And eventually it was way too big to float to the surface. This isn't like Biden, had an affair or something back in his early Senate days, or that he, or stories that kind of fade in the past and kind of live there. They really don't, they may circulate every once in a while, but they really don't. This was a brand new set of evidence, really, to something that we had already known about the influence peddling of Joe Biden's family. That laptop was, it was the golden egg. It may have been the goose and the golden egg. And it just, over and over again, every effort made it look legitimate. Their effort to cover it up made it look legitimate. And here we are now in 23. I don't know anybody claiming that the whole laptop story is bogus.
No, there's no one claiming that.
I think the last effort is gone when basically a couple of times in recent months, Hunter Biden's lawyers basically admitted it's his laptop.
Yeah, that's a great point. They admitted it there. And this defense really went nowhere, remember? Well, the computer store owner looked at it illegally. It's like,
right.
Well, guys, that's not going to go anywhere.
Right. He was hired to actually look at the computer.
Right. That's not going to go anywhere. And I'm like, wow, they've really got nothing. And you remember when the lawyers were going to do scorched earth?
Yeah.
Anybody who comes out, it's gone completely the opposite.
Right. Well, because it was happening so quickly, more and more was being learned. They would basically have to go after everybody.
That's a good point.
And now, it's when you pair this with the classified document thing, it is so massive, especially what you mentioned earlier. If we learned that the documents if some of the documents at the Biden home were used by Hunter and shown to any foreign nationals, used in any kind of negotiation, and taking that information and getting rich off of it, this is even bigger than selling access and influence. It's a direct shot of, okay, this is if they could prove, if they got one or two documents and said, all right, we can actually prove that Hunter Biden used this in order to get this deal or that deal or keep this arrangement or whatever it might be, it would be the biggest presidential scandal in our history, at least recent history. You could take that; it would quite possibly
I believe it
destroy the party.
Yeah, it would be because you have influence. Remember, the influence peddling then was backed by, in essence, de facto by trying to censor it, was then backed by the Democratic Party and the entirety of the media, the mainstream media.
Yeah,
we're trying to and social media. Mm-hmm. We're trying to protect influence peddling.
Right.
And this influence peddling is so massive. I'm trying to think. I don't know of another in any type of presidential race or any type of president where the influence peddling is this widespread.
Right.
And so I agree with you. It would be the biggest presidential scandal. Well, I think it is the biggest presidential scandal
it is already,
in American history.
Yeah, it is already. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you could demonstrate that quid pro quo, that, okay,
right,
he used that document in maintaining a flow of money or arranging for a flow of money or any
right,
deal that he made, I mean, that's it. That's the smoking gun.
Or if he didn't pay taxes on it. If they can find out he got income or things done to his home,
yes,
whatever.
I mean, and add to it the criminal,
right.
Any possible crimes that were committed as a result of that.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Jim Jordan said over the weekend that Biden made the Hunter laptop intel letter seem organic, and that was a great point. That this thing just came out. In fact, it was inspired again, by the Secretary of State, who was part of the Biden campaign at that point. We'll get to that, plus how is the mainstream media covering this, all coming up.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley, 866-90 Red Eye. Good morning. Here we are another week. And the one thing I'm thinking of is, the Blinken thing especially, because it came from Mike Morrell, who was, CIA director during the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. That, this thing's going to blow up before the end of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Republicans are going to want to bring, it's all politics. Yeah, they're politicians. So let's get that out of the way now.
Yeah.
But they're going to they're going to be pounding on this week, demanding an answer, as to whether they did, this happen. And you think about it just here in the last couple of days. It's been bad enough for Biden with all the Hunter Biden stuff, coming out and the story, which really started a couple of weeks ago when it was, 80 of Hunter Biden's associates, business associates, visited Biden in the White House when he was vice president. Or excuse me, not 80 times.
80 times.
80 times. Yeah. It was not 80 people, 80 times. That was damning in itself. But now you've got two separate things here. You've got Blinken with this accusation against him and the one against Merrick Garland. And what I noticed is I thought Merrick Garland would speak up or have some kind of a statement. Nothing.
Yeah, there was nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And he's been very quick. If there's been major criticism of his office, he may not take any questions, but he'll hold a press conference and say something. Yeah. There's been nothing out of it. And so these two things are just, when you start getting, beyond, because this is going beyond Hunter and beyond the president. Now this goes to his cabinet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's not also forget his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan. Remember, Jake Sullivan was involved in the Hillary campaign.
Right.
And the whole deceit there and that political, dirty trick there. But you start setting a pattern, and the Republicans will, where everyone who surrounds the president is corrupt. And so is the president.
Yeah, the one thing you can't say about Trump is that the people who worked for him did something like this, because it was quite the opposite. Jeff Sessions became the enemy eventually. At one point, right. A.G. Barr was the enemy. Remember, there was a calling for, fire Barr, fire, Sessions. And Sessions was the first major GOP member of the party at that time who jumped on board with Trump and endorsed him. It was early that he endorsed him. And so you can't make that case. You can't make that comparison with the Trump administration. In fact, I don't know that you can make this kind of comparison. If you think about what we know about the three you just mentioned, I don't know that you can make that kind of comparison for any modern president. I don't know of based on everything that they were involved in. Jake Sullivan, then with the Hillary campaign, now Blinken, then with the Biden campaign, and now Secretary of State, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, and H.E. Garland, who was basically setting up shop. And keep in mind, setting up shop, we're being told by the whistleblower to get in front of the entire investigation, but also working really hard with Biden to build that firewall on the documents. The DOJ, working really hard to go out of their way to not communicate effectively during that entire process. After we learned, we weren't but a few months into it or weeks into it when we learned that timeline and how the DOJ was acting under Garland's reign. So all of this with those three individuals, my gosh.
The only thing, you could say, I think I agree with you. This is the worst ever. But when you talk about those that surrounded Nixon, they did attempt to create a firewall with Watergate. But remember, Watergate was unsuccessful.
Yeah.
The bugging of the Democratic headquarters was discovered.
Mm-hmm.
So that was unsuccessful. When you look at, if you want to look at Russia collusion, the political impact of that was extremely successful.
Yeah.
The Hunter Biden, I agree with you. The letter, we always thought it was weak, but it was an effective political.
And how it was, in how it was structured.
Right. We knew
was my earlier point.
Yeah, we knew it was weak, but it was effective politically right before the election.
Well,
if that was absolutely true and it was disseminated by the media earlier, a couple of months earlier, that these are payments that would have gone, to the president and the president's being questioned. Could you imagine Bob Ulinsky being interviewed by everybody in the middle of September?
Yeah.
Or even the beginning of October, stating, no, he took money, and everybody had him as a legitimate witness.
If one of the 51 former Intel officials that were on that letter had come out and said, yeah, it's Blinken with his campaign. He's the one that organized this whole thing before it all happened.
That's a great point. Yep. Boom.
Then that would have would have crumbled, and the media wouldn't be able to ignore it at that time.
And so this is really, it's one of our friends in the media the other day said, I'm sick of the word bombshell. I just burst out laughing.
Right. Bombshell. Yeah.
But you think about it, these are, and I always look at this, and there's so much that comes at us every single day. And probably to our listeners too, that you wonder at times, okay, it's just another accusation. But these are serious accusations, and the fact is you have witnesses. There's a difference between the accusations against Biden, and even if you look at Blinken and Garland, whatever, is that everything, the vast majority of things about Trump, the vast majority, they could never connect any dots.
Yeah.
It was an accusation.
Right.
That never had any evidence to back it up. If you look at Russia collusion, for example, we know the first impeachment has fallen apart.
Yeah.
Because of why? Because of Hunter Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can see a future House reversing the impeachment on Trump.
I thought about that a week or two ago.
And there was a talk that they may do it for both of them. But I'm just talking about impeachment one because it relates to this precisely. Mm-hmm. There was a legit reason. There was a legit reason for the executive branch to be concerned about what the previous executive branch was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
And I say executive branch because Biden would have been, vice president.
Right,
so it's the executive branch there. Mm-hmm. I want to play this audio. This comes from CBS. So CBS covered. CBS starts covering it, and then everybody else seems to follow now. But here's CBS on the Blinken story.
According to House Republicans, they're saying that former CIA Deputy Director Mike Morell gave them new information about the origins of a letter from 50 former intelligence officials concerning Hunter Biden's laptop. That statement, you'll recall, was published in October of 2020, and it suggested possible Russian involvement in hacking the laptop's contents. Our senior investigative correspondent, Catherine Herridge, has more.
I've never spoken much.
In the final weeks of the 2020 presidential campaign, the New York Post reported on the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, alleging he used his father's position for personal gain, a claim the president's son has denied. Less than a week later, more than 50 former intelligence officials released a statement that the laptop had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation.
Laptop from hell.
At the final presidential debate, then candidate Biden cited the letter from intel officials to push back against then President Trump's attacks.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
According to a letter released Thursday night from the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees, former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morell told congressional investigators that days after the laptop story, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, then a Biden campaign advisor, reached out to Morell and set in motion the events that led to the intelligence officials' public statement.
If they made an effort to manipulate intelligence officials to sign a letter basically misleading the public about the Hunter Biden laptop right before the election, that is a major, major political event.
This comes after an IRS agent came forward this week alleging the investigation involving Hunter Biden's taxes has been improperly influenced for political reasons. The White House responded.
The president respects the rule of law and the independence of the Department of Justice.
We asked Morell, who is a former CBS News contributor, if the characterization of his congressional interview is accurate, and he declined to comment. In a tweet, the White House accused House Republicans of weaponizing their power to relitigate the 2020 election rather than focus on the real problems Americans face.
Well, that's about the only sort of response you can give.
Right.
Let's look forward, don't look at my past. Don't look at what I did.
Yeah, let's focus on inflation. Oh, that's a problem, huh? now he's going to focus on inflation. Oh, it's really bad. I understand. Those are the things too. Is that you really don't want to focus on the other problems that America faces.
That's a 2 minute and 30-second, 2.5, and on CBS, and everybody's covering it because now it's expanding now, and the public is extremely interested in things like this because that's influence. This is all about influence peddling.
Yeah,
and you look at it, you go, okay, this is Antony Blinken trying to protect the president from the legit evidence that exists on influence peddling.
If I'm doing the math here, if that's an evening broadcast, that's 10% of their broadcast.
Yeah, good point.
You take out the commercial time, and that's roughly 10% of their broadcast dedicated to that, and then coupling the other story with it about Merrick Garland. They basically dovetailed that in at the end. They're not just acknowledging these things. And you didn't hear that. Typically, the liberal media would come out and they would start the game with, these allegations. That's the tone of the story, and then at the end, and some are claiming blah, blah, blah. They did the entire rundown, if you think about it, of what's going on here, and then dovetailed in at the end or mentioned at the end the response by the administration. We need to focus on the real problem. Americans want us to focus on the real problems. No, they don't. You mean the broken border and inflation? Okay, we can talk about that too. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. But these are the tells right now that, and you saw the poll that came out, and it's over and over again. The majority of people don't want Biden to run again. And he's apparently getting ready to announce sometime soon. But the liberal media clearly doesn't have any use for this administration anymore.
More to come, 866-90 Red Eye.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Like the chief financial officer of any company, you have to be concerned about rising costs, especially without increases in revenue. Trying to reduce costs, let alone make sense of them, can be a complicated task. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. A penny saved could be $1,000 earned. Saving just 1 penny per mile over 100,000 miles driven annually will deliver $1,000 to the bottom line at the end of the year. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I do think that all the Democrats now in the Sunday morning news shows that seem to be obsessed, and we'll get to some of the audio cuts later on in the show, about Biden's age, that it's actually not Biden's age. I really think that last week, because think about last week. Last week you've got both an IRS whistleblower saying Merrick Garland is really the person behind it, is basically lied to Congress. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Justice is keeping this investigation on Hunter Biden from moving forward. That's the allegation from him. And then the whole Blinken thing with the letter. All of it is about protecting Hunter Biden, which is protecting what? The influence peddling of the Biden family that includes Joe Biden. Yeah. That just blew up because it went beyond the Biden family now. And now you're starting to spread the tentacles. And the first thing that you saw was, well, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up, just like Watergate.
Yeah.
And I went, and that's what you're getting into now, because now the cover-up, in the perception in people's minds now, is the cover-up is now consisting of not just Biden, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and his family, but now outside influences is one of his former campaign aides, who's now Secretary of State, and the Attorney General of the United States. And it's all about influence peddling. Everything relates back to the Biden family enriching themselves because of the president's position.
Well, and if you think about it, we bring Jake Sullivan into the fold here because of the massive Russian hoax that he was a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so they built the machine. If you think about how the Democrats have acted, they built this machine. Going back to Hillary's run in 2016, continued that behavior in 2020, controlling through the FBI, the social media, and all of it. I mean, say what you will about Watergate. It was a big deal, of course. But it doesn't compare when you put everything in perspective from that we know just from 2016 on. There were other things that we could add into it, and their behavior around elections and how people they were trying to get Hillary elected and then eventually getting Biden elected, because you can look at it and the numbers point to a great number of Americans that would have voted differently if they had known the truth about the Hunter Biden laptop thing. So all of that put together is again this big. It's not a political machine; it's a political AI army. It's that kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Follow me if you want to live.
Well, and plus we can throw in by the way, we'll get to the whole Jim Jordan Bragg thing here in a little bit, but you throw in the Bragg prosecution too, which then people take all of this on top of it and say, well, everything seemed to be the Democrats making up something. The major disinformation that Democrats claim that they're against, the major disinformation in the United States over the last couple of years on all the major stories have come from the Democrats.
Yeah.
And they wish what they're trying to do with their disinformation boards is actually to keep the information from coming to the American public. And then Bragg's prosecution is so blatantly political across the board where it's almost like, well, this is the last act of desperation, and we know it's obvious that it's political, but it's all we have.
Right.
That's the perception that I get.
Yeah, right. And because you can't undo it now, right? You built this massive monster of a machine politically, and there's just no way to undo it. These are going to be the tactics going forward.
Gary McNamara and Eric Harley taking your calls. 1-866-90-RED-EYE.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. So looking at this whole Bragg situation, and I sit back and I say to myself, all right, what's really going on here? Because Jim Jordan wants to interview the former DA or assistant DA Pomerantz to appear as he used to work for Bragg for a deposition, and Bragg tried to stop it, and it went to one judge who said nope, sorry, and then it went higher up, and they said, well, no, we're going to put a stay on it, and all of a sudden Friday he says, nope, I withdraw my appeal. He can appear before you.
Yeah.
And you look at this, I mean, this Pomerantz was one that wanted to go after Trump.
Right, yeah.
And quit because Bragg wouldn't initially go after him, and then all the backlash from that. And Bragg, they believe, changed his mind and came up with this convoluted, ridiculous, theory of law, which is bogus to begin with, to go after Trump. Everybody knows it's weak. And so, I'm wondering, I think everybody's wondering, all right, why is this the guy that Jim Jordan wants to interview? Why do they want a deposition from him? What is the point? And why did Bragg cave? Why didn't he take it all the way? How does it harm him to take it all the way to the Supreme Court and stall this thing out? If there's a reason that Jim Jordan wants him that will blow this case out of the water. And that, I think, is the one question that I saw most asked out there is, why does Jordan want this guy?
Yeah, I guess,
Bragg, go after Bragg, but...
Right. Well, would it be to learn more about why, it wasn't pursued before? And I don't know.
I'm sure that's why, but to show the politics, maybe Jordan wants to expose how radical this guy is.
Right.
But this is a guy who wanted to prosecute Trump last time.
Right.
Would be interesting I guess it'd be interesting to find out as to what, but his deposition will leak eventually.
Yeah.
We're going to find out what's in the deposition. So I guess it's more questions than anything else.
Right, yeah.
Why, what is the chess game being played here? I guess is my question. And I don't know.
Well, yeah, does Jordan believe he's going to learn that, look, they couldn't, even though they wanted to before, go after Trump, but they ultimately failed to find a crime and didn't, and it didn't come together.
Well, I know that's his eventual thing, but bringing Pomerantz on, Pomerantz wanted to prosecute. He believed there was enough evidence. So does Jordan want to bring him in to show how radical, the former assistant AG was? That this guy was even more radical than Bragg? I don't know. I mean, that's my question.
Yeah, okay.
Pomerantz wanted.
Yeah, I know he wanted to, but if you look at it, I think a number of them wanted to before. The question was, all right, where did they fail to do that before? And what was there, what wasn't there? I don't know why Bragg would step in front of it. How does it not help Bragg for him to speak openly? Because the statement came out over the weekend since this story broke, that from Bragg's office, basically, yeah, well, okay, he's going to have counsel with him. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, well, he would always have counsel with him. That would be the case. Is Bragg saying they didn't have the ability to ensure that counsel would be sitting next to him to guide his answers before, up until now? Was that part of the negotiation? Because in the way that it was phrased from Bragg's office, that's what it made it feel like. But I thought to myself, well, wasn't that always going to be the case?
Yeah, I mean that.
Wouldn't you always have counsel sitting next to them to guide their answers? That's just kind of part of the process.
Yeah.
So I don't know why Bragg would step in front of it to begin with. And except for to just shut it down and not have the hearing process go on as long. I don't know.
Well, because the fight was originally the politics of it is that Jim Jordan and the federal level should have no jurisdiction or subpoena power over anybody who has worked for my office because the Congress has no authority over my office to begin with. Now, the difference is the $5,000. Mm-hmm. The $5,000 of federal money then gives, Congress in my opinion, gives Congress the authority. Now they can't arrest Bragg.
Yeah, there's nothing actionable by them. They can tell a story.
Yeah, you can tell a story, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. If you can always, as Congress, looking at oversight, saying, well, they blew this money. We don't want to give this money anymore to local DAs to do something like this, or we don't believe his office should get this federal money because he's using it for political purposes. So you're telling a story that way, and where he would be disciplined would be the state of New York, but that's in all likelihood not going to happen.
Right. Well, and because if you look at it, this negotiation that they, this settlement that they agreed on the testimony, you could see where Bragg's office, just even if it weren't Bragg, prosecutor's office would say, well, we don't want anything talked about that might interfere or compromise the integrity of our current investigation or case. But that's going to be, again, that's going to be a given. It would be a given that anybody that had any past in this whole process is going to have to be careful about what they can say, and they know that. So I don't know. I don't know what Jordan believes he's going to get out of it, and I don't know why Bragg would want to step in front of it. So we'll see.
Yeah, because the whole argument from Democrats was you have no authority to even even subpoena any of these people whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And that argument's now gone for the Democrats now that Bragg has agreed, okay, no, he can testify. So what are they because that argument's now here. But here's another point. Do Democrats really want to stay as this thing blown up in their face where Democrats just want to stay away from it? And that's why I didn't see any pushback to what Bragg did where Democrats said Bragg shouldn't have done that. When they were fighting this last week saying Jordan has no authority over Bragg's office or anybody who's ever worked in Bragg's office.
That's a good question because it comes down to Trump's appearance on that day. Remember, it seemed like the media or the day after, the story just went nowhere because the media was showing up. You're looking at 34 counts. 34 counts. Everybody was like, oh, man. And I know the liberal media was probably foaming at the mouth. I can't wait to read this. Oh, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And then, so they went quiet, and the story just kind of, fell. And it really was the story. The story became, or clearly was, always about Trump's appearance there in the court. And because the case itself is baseless. And The media didn't have anything to go on. There were no talking points to take from that and go write a story in any liberal news group. There really was nowhere to go with it. So I don't know. Maybe it's that Bragg on the whole, you don't have the authority to subpoena and was standing on it. Maybe this really wasn't so much of a settlement as it was Bragg realizing he couldn't avoid it or he couldn't prevent it.
You and I were talking about this when was when the indictment first came out. We found out the grand jury was going to indict, and the media just went crazy over it. And wait till they get the picture of the president. They're waiting to get that picture of the president sitting at the table, and it's going to be unprecedented in American history because this is a blah, 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 blah. And I went, stop it. And, stop this because it doesn't matter. The American public knows, the majority knows this is political, that it's bogus.
Yeah.
So it isn't like they get Biden's family on influence peddling and not reporting income,
right?
To the IRS. Those would actually be criminal charges, and the political charge of whether you can say the president was giving documents or allowing foreign enemies to see documents or something like that, which could lead to espionage charges. I mean, those would be the ultimate things you'd be looking at in this particular case.
Yeah.
And those are, you can look at it and go, okay, nope, they've connected the dots there. It's like impeachment. Remember, this was unprecedented. This will go down in American history, 2 impeachments, blah, except they were bogus.
Yeah.
They were bogus impeachments. They were they were absolutely political. And the news story is not that the president was impeached twice, but they were bogus impeachments.
Yeah.
And what came out of this is not that history, former president is indicted and has to appear and it's going to blah, 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 blah. It meant nothing because it was so overtly political that the story is that you will have a DA that will make up a crime and try to make up a crime to accuse a president of 34 felonies just for political purposes where there's no evidence there. Because you and I were amazed that by the time we got to Friday of that week, Thursday,
gone.
Nobody was talking about it anymore. It was unprecedented. So I look at this and say, when Bragg, the only argument they had was the Jordan has no authority over. Well, apparently he does because Bragg says go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially Bragg, has no problem with it. So why did Bragg do it would be the question. Why did he not fight this, as far as he could fight it? The appeals court came in and said, okay, we're going to put a stay till at least this weekend on it.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this.
Right.
And they could have gone through the court, and he decided not to. The question I ask is
that's
why?
A good point. On the appeals level, Bragg won.
Yeah, exactly.
So why not delay it even further? I don't know. Because it's not like he would have a heads up as to this, how this is going to go, past the appeals. And because I don't know how long it would take to get to the Supreme Court. I mean, I'm guessing they would ask for, an expedited decision.
I guess what you could get if you're Jim Jordan to tell a story would be these are the type of people that were working for Bragg. And remember, he wrote the book.
Right.
He wrote the book on Trump, People versus Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, what did you, and it could show, the type of people, how radical they are that work for Bragg. And that and set up the whole thing that once the pressure came on, once Pomerantz wrote the book, where Bragg was going somewhere that he really never wanted to go, and you could get that from Pomerantz. Well, Bragg didn't want to go there because he didn't believe there was anything there. And now he's going after it, so you end up coming back around by having Pomerantz on where you initially think, well, he wanted to go after Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe that shows how radical he is. And then you ask him, well, why didn't Bragg want to do it? Because he comes out and says, well, because Bragg says there's no evidence here of any crime. And that hurts Bragg even more if you're telling the story, because obviously the charges against Trump are bogus.
Right.
Which then makes me wonder, why did Bragg say yes? Why didn't he fight it?
Right. Well, again, you had the latest decision was working in your favor.
Yeah.
You could at least kick the can down the road, or did he have reason to believe that it wasn't going to work in his favor much longer? I mean,
he would have lost.
We have reason to believe that.
Yeah, he would have lost the higher it went. Because the highest it would go to would be the Supreme Court. But why didn't he fight it for the political purpose of just fighting it?
Right.
Because he's fighting against Trump and Trump allies. Why did he, in essence, concede?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, I expect the answers in the testimony or the deposition to be, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. Don't remember. Can't talk about it. Can't talk about it.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. Couple of things. Bud Light, the marketing director on a leave of absence. And we'll tell you about the former NBA legend. Well, he's not former. You're a legend all the time.
Yeah, you're always a legend, I think.
Phil Jackson has not watched an NBA game since 2020.
Wow.
Why? We'll tell you.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, 866-90-RED-EYE. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning, as always. Been spending a lot of time over the last couple of months just going through so much of different hearings from Congress on YouTube. And it's just so great because, I don't get the commercials.
Yeah,
I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying for me, it was worth, I don't have cable anymore, don't have satellite anymore, but I will spend money for things that make my life a lot easier. And it makes my life a lot easier not having those commercials on YouTube because I can go through so much during the day.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. But I wanted to go back. This actually goes back to March. And this was the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability on Economic Growth, Energy Policy, and Regulatory Affairs. And Representative Perry from Pennsylvania was asking questions to one of the Democratic witnesses, Damon Drummer, from the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy. And this debate was, and it's superb here because they get into talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
Yeah.
And the point is, he sort of gets the Democratic witness in a bind because the Democratic witness had talked about the fact that the releasing out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve helped to bring prices down. And so where they're going at this particular point.
Yeah.
And so I just want to play a little bit of this back and forth that happened in March just to show you, man, I would hate to be a liberal because I would hate not to be able to complete all my points. When you and I connect the dots, there has to be a beginning and then an end. There's a conclusion to it that makes sense to everybody. There isn't like a huge whopper of a question. Yeah, but
Yeah.
and that's what happens with Democrats. Let's play part of this here.
Caused what precipitated.
I'm going to start.
Mr. Drummer, you just kind of mentioned first of all, were you alive during the 1970s era gas crisis? Just out of curiosity, I don't know, so I'm just asking.
I wasn't born yet.
You weren't, but you do acknowledge that was the reason for the construction and the development, the advent of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, right? You'll acknowledge that, right?
Yes.
And do you know what precipitated that? Why did we do it? Why did America do it?
I'd like to follow your point here. Would you like to elaborate? I mean,
why did we create a Strategic Petroleum Reserve? What was happening at the time?
There was an energy crisis that was outside of our control.
Okay, and who was controlling it?
The cartel of states that are the primary energy producers.
In the Middle East, right? The cartel of states in the Middle East. Now, they said there was an energy crisis. I was alive at the time. And they said there was an energy crisis and we're actually running out of oil. That's what they said. There was a limited supply and it was all going to run out and the prices were going up and you couldn't get it. You could only buy gas odd and even days based on your license plate. I lived through the whole thing. And so we created this Strategic Petroleum Reserve to counteract the global market's control over it, right? Would you agree?
I'm following you.
Okay, you're following me. Okay, so, and I would acknowledge you say it's a global market, which you said it's a global market, right? But you just said, with the last my colleague from Ohio, you just said that when the president released oil from the SPRO, that it actually reduced cost. Did you not?
I'm citing the majority's witness on who acknowledges that of all the factors, that definitely did play a role. Not an outsized role, but it played a role.
Did it reduce the cost or not? That's what I'm asking. Did it reduce the cost or not?
It did.
Okay.
But the majority is arguing that
so it reduced
that should
the
not
cost,
have been done.
But prior to this, with Mr. Donalds, you said it's a global market and there's nothing we can do to control it. If there's nothing we can do to control it, how did releasing oil from the SPRO reduce the cost?
It reduced the cost marginally, but the price was
I don't care if it's
at elevated
marginal or
levels.
not, but it reduced the cost. The point is that we can do something about it because, sir, in your testimony, you say that we can't drill our way to energy security, but clearly we can because we can influence the global market. That's exactly what just happened, and you just admitted to it. So what we're here to talk about is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and what it's used for. Do you know what it's used for? Do you know why it was designed? Do you know the definition, why we have a Strategic Petroleum Reserve?
We have the reserve to insulate the U.S. from these types of energy shocks in times of crisis.
In times of crisis, emergency, national security emergency, and natural disaster. What national emergency was occurring that required the release of so much, or literally any, of the SPRO? What national emergency was occurring during the Biden administration that required us to do that?
If I recall, there was a war in Ukraine.
And that's a national emergency for the United States of America. Did it imperil the United States of America's ability to drill its own oil, produce its own fossil fuels, refine them, and get them to market?
The president made a judgment.
Just answer that question.
The war in Ukraine was driving up costs for oil to the extent to which it would mandate or even lead him to make the decision to make the release.
Was it an emergency?
It was a global energy crisis. This is well established. Are we?
No, it's not, sir. You can't say it was well established when it's not well established. You
also say record costs in
reclaiming my time.
Globally,
what established facts do you have?
Globally?
You say that wind and solar are by far the most cost-effective sources of energy on the planet, and you say it's an established fact. What are those established facts, and who established them?
I invite you to read the footnote and source for that claim.
Well, just
in my
tell
testimony.
me. This is your testimony. You just tell me and tell us what the established facts are.
Renewables, particularly wind and solar, are the most cost-efficient and cost-effective means of producing energy on this planet.
Says who? Says who?
Says physics.
No. Who's the person? Name, cite the study, sir.
Give me a moment. I'm going to look at the report. that I cited and give you the name of the report that
Sir, have you ever worked in the energy securities market?
I have worked at the grassroots levels. I have worked at the national level.
The energy securities market. Have you advised
I have not worked in the energy securities market, but it doesn't take an energy trader.
Sir, you've got as much experience as I do, and I pump gas for a living. That's what that's.
And I checked on this guy. He's a professional educator is what he is. Mm-hmm. I went back and looked to see where he was, and I'm like, wow, they really presented a weak witness because I can tell you without anything in front of me and without the so-called expertise of the Democratic witness there, why solar and wind is more expensive than traditional energy. And one of the major reasons is you can't have it 24/7 and you need a redundancy of a backup of traditional energy, which we're doing here in the state of Texas, which is going to skyrocket the electricity prices here because they need to make a ton of natural gas plants that may only run 10% of the time to back up solar and wind.
Because they're only running part-time, they're much less efficient in terms of the cost of maintaining and running them. Yeah. And, physics. He just throws it out. That's his answer. Physics. Yeah. Tell us the physics of it. What does it take? What does it take to build a wind farm? What does it take to build a solar farm? What is required, in fact, if it is such a great efficiency, what would be required in terms of building out the wind and solar farms and the infrastructure for the delivery of the energy that they produce, which they can't do constantly?
Right, and I just gave one point. The other point would be the materials that are necessary to mine it, the efficiency of it, something that we had talked about the other day, that the massive new grid that has to be produced because you have now electricity not coming from a very, very small area and spreading out, but you've got to have grids all over the place to connect all of these, what you would need, thousands upon thousands and millions upon millions of acres of solar panels and windmills spread all over the country, so the cost would be through the roof. And since you would need to have an entire backup system of natural gas generators to do it, which aren't running, the cost would skyrocket through the roof.
Yes.
So this guy who claims he's an expert says physics.
Yeah. Physics, dude.
I'm telling you, there isn't one single issue where the Democrats know what the hell they're talking about.
No, there isn't. And over again, they have to make it up as they go along.
Yeah, physics.
Because physics, man.
Because, I'm not an expert in that field, but you don't need to be an expert in the field.
You don't.
I don't need to work on a well, or I don't need to be part of the chemists in a refinery that are refining it to a particular product to understand the economics of it.
Well, and explain to me the physics. Yeah. From the very beginning of mining the material to build out the energy farms that would be required, to the transmission of those energy and build the infrastructure, to the transmission of the energy, and also, what about on those days that aren't so sunny and aren't so windy? What about sub-freezing temperatures? When the windmills have to go into protection mode and pump oil basically to an oil that heats the turbine to keep it from freezing instead of producing energy.
And as we know, we've played the Obama Cup many times before where he has said, naturally, the goal is to skyrocket electricity prices so green energy can compete. So they have to skyrocket it. So it isn't the most price efficient at all. Physics doesn't show that at all.
No.
And then, John, and this is what reminded me of this audio that I just was sitting in the back. I just didn't get a chance to play it when I saw John Kerry over the weekend, green energy will be more competitive if we raise the price of oil and gas. That's the entire goal of the Democrats, is to skyrocket the cost of oil and gasoline. That's why they do not want to have production in the United States. They only want to increase production to lower gasoline prices near an election.
Yep.
And then they don't wish to do it anymore. So there's right there, Kerry, green energy will be more competitive if we raise prices of oil and natural gas. Why? Because solar and wind are more expensive.
Yeah.
And solar and wind are more expensive. Even with the subsidies, they're still more expensive.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. But yeah, but I went back and looked at this guy's record. I'm just like, well, he's just been an educator all this time. He's been going to school.
Mm-hmm.
When I actually looked it over, I go, what experience does he have in the industry or economics? And I can't find any. And I'm like, wow, that's the best the Democrats could do, is send him in there?
Oh.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, look at the makeup of everybody in the Biden administration.
Clueless.
Ask about their expertise in any of the departments.
Clueless.
You got a guy who was a mayor in charge of the Department of Transportation.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. 866-90-RED-EYE. If you'd like to get in on the show today, well, Anheuser-Busch is rearranging the management of its Bud Light brand.
Huh. I guess just a coincidence.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Bud Light Marketing Vice President Alyssa Heinerscheid is taking a leave of absence and is being replaced by Budweiser Global Marketing Vice President Todd Allen.
Oh.
The company has also hired 2 consultants with experience in Washington, D.C.'s conservative circles to advise the brand moving forward.
Oh. Really? Oh. Well, I wonder what.
Oh, wow.
You know, some points have been made. What's interesting is some interesting points have been made about how this all went down. You know, I forget who it was that made the point. I don't know. This is early on at National Review, that Bud Light doesn't really know its consumer. They don't know their, you know, the people that have been loyal to their brand. Someone else made the comment that, you know, the response by her, the I guess former marketing director there, and the whole comment on we wanted to move away from the frat boy image and everything else. That was so bad, because what you say is, listen, we want everybody to enjoy our product. Anybody and everybody can enjoy it. Instead of, yeah, we don't like these frat boys, and then like a couple of days later, there's pictures of her that come out from a party somebody had on Facebook, the pictures, and she actually said it, you know?
She was blowing up a condom.
Right. Yeah, in one of the pictures, she's blowing up a condom and drinking a beer that's not a Bud Light in the other one of the other pictures. Now, it could have been, I'm guessing maybe it was long before she was at Bud Light. I don't know.
Oh, my.
But the whole idea is that you say this, and we talked about this back then years ago with Howard Schultz. God, my gosh, that's been a long time that we talked about that, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, when he was at Starbucks, and it's, hey, don't know, you know, you can talk about the issues all day. we serve coffee. Well, here's the deal. You come in, you order your coffee the way you want it. We'll make it the way you want it, right there for you, the way you want it. We'll put your name on the cup even. We'll write your name on the cup. It doesn't really have to even be your name. Just give us a name, any name. We'll write it on the cup, and we'll make you some great coffee right there. Hey, we make the best coffee. Come on in and try our coffee. But if you want to jump into it, then expect that there's going to be a response.
So that was 2015.
Crazy.
Well, he rescinded it. It said, send a letter to employees that baristas would no longer be encouraged to write the phrase, let's race together on customers' coffee cups.
Remember, let's talk race, that whole thing?
Yes. Yeah. Where the baristas were going to talk racial issues with the customer. I mean, that's even worse than the Bud Light thing.
No, think about it. They're in the boardroom. They're sitting there in the meeting. Okay, I got this idea. Oh, really? Yeah. This is something that everybody agrees on. Racial issues. So here's how we'll do it. Stay with me. We'll write it on their cup so that when they leave there with what is now their cup and take it out into the world, it will be something that they'll be proud to show everybody, and they'll want to talk to everybody about racial issues. Wow.
What could go wrong?
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. And then you go back to, and we'll get back to the Bud Light thing in just a moment, but we were making the comparison to Starbucks. Remember in 2013, because 2015 was it was March of 2015 when he finally came out and said, okay, I don't want the baristas talking race to the customers, and having the discussion on race. Remember, 2013 was, and I'm reading this here, after years of waffling amid increased controversy, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz has finally asked gun owners to stop carrying firearms into his stores. But that doesn't mean you can't carry your gun in when you get a latte. Schultz and company would just prefer that you didn't. No signs will be posted, and employees will not are not to confront gun owning customers, or not to confront gun owners who are customers. Pro-gun activists have used our stores as a political stage for media events, misleading called Starbucks Appreciation Days that disingenuously portrayed Starbucks as a champion of open carry. He wrote in a letter posted on Tuesday night, to be clear, we do not want these events at our stores. It's like, how do you even get involved in any of this stuff? You sell coffee. Sell the coffee.
That's all you got to do.
Sell the beer.
That's all you got. People are buying your beer. People are buying your coffee. You know, there's the two things. I mean, if you think about it, beer and coffee. You know, if the government had come in during the COVID thing and said, we're going to stop all sales of coffee and beer, it would have been riots in the streets. And it is, I mean, every day you've got people at your location when it comes to coffee, at every location, every morning, a line around the block to buy really expensive coffee. And they do it every day, some of them multiple times a day.
You can sell your coffee, play New Age music, and everybody will know you're liberal.
Exactly.
Without being offensive.
It's okay. It's fine. Hippies make two things really great: coffee and ice cream. Let them do it.
When you're saying that, I'm just thinking if Bud Light would have come on and said, we would prefer that none of our Bud Light customers have a gun.
my gosh.
Have a six-pack of Bud Light and then discuss race.
Yeah.
And throw in religion, too.
Right. Exactly. Why not? And guns.
And Trump. We encourage, Bud Light encourages all liberals and conservatives to have a six-pack and then afterwards discuss the news of the day.
Yeah.
Maybe we can find some common ground.
I'm going to tell you,
Bud
man,
Light.
Clydesdales don't leave bigger messes than this. I just don't get it. I really don't. You're killing it. You're crushing it when it comes to beer.
Yeah, they are.
You're crushing
Or they
it.
were.
And coffee. You own the game. And every caffeine addict in the world will tell you own the game. You know what you discuss? Coffee. Would you like another one? I mean, how is that not number one? Why do you have to feel like you're already a hero? You're already a hero.
Yeah, you have their coffee. You're already a hero.
Right? Remember when they had to shut down to do the sensitivity training?
Oh, yes. Remember
they shut down in the
half
afternoon
a day or something.
They didn't shut down in the morning. Why don't you shut down in the morning?
Well,
nobody would shut down in the morning.
They got involved in the guns.
Yeah.
Then they got involved in anybody can come into the store, even if you're not a customer. Remember that?
Right.
And then the problem with that is, well, wait a minute. Then your bathrooms are going to become drug havens.
Yeah.
So then they had to back off on that. Then they had to back off on the race thing.
Right.
It does seem like that Bud Light has realized we can't win this. We shouldn't be involved in politics. We should be involved in, look, any and it doesn't have to be just a beer. Any soft drink.
Yeah.
Any soft drink is picnics, family, right?
Right.
Picnics, family,
Yeah.
beach,
Right.
boating,
Right.
Coca-Cola was it? Teach the World to Sing, I think, was originally a Christmas. I thought it was originally a Christmas commercial.
I thought it was a hippie commercial.
One of them was Teach the World to Sing and Perfect.
But they had a lot of
was.
Christmas commercials.
But that's
campaigns.
But you can be generally, let's all be good to people. You can throw that general statement out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's I
don't have to know what it means to want oh, okay, yeah, now I want a soda and I'll go for the, whatever. It's not that, it isn't that hard. If you start losing...
in either case, Starbucks or Bud Light, you're selling liquid drugs.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
Exactly. If you're
understand the consumer.
If you're losing market share to your competitor all of a sudden without doing anything, then you might want to think about your game and figure out what's going on there. Otherwise, if it ain't broke, don't throw it into a gasoline fire. I just don't. Again, I don't. And it's, with Bud Light, it was bad after bad. Okay, so they made the move, and then there was a reaction to it, and then the marketing person comes out and says, well, we wanted to move away from the frat boy. Basically labeling everybody, their audience as a bunch of frat boys. I got news for you, ma'am. A bunch of people that drink didn't even go to college.
Well, let me ask
you. And they're working class individuals that say at the end of my day, I'd like to have a cold brew.
Well, let me ask you this.
And they chose yours.
Because we've been talking about this across the board, with Hunter Biden, where it's now, okay, will the cover-up be worse than the crime? was actually the cover-up worse than the initial crime when she said the frat boys thing?
I think they could have
I really wonder if that was...
I think they could have gotten beyond the whole, making again, they weren't marketing the cans. If they had marketed the cans, if those cans were going to be in coolers everywhere, that might have been different. But they weren't marketing the cans. And it was like, hey, listen, we wanted to acknowledge this person because we welcome anybody, to responsibly enjoy our product. And that's what we're all about. So, but of course, we also acknowledge all the hardworking men and women out there. Because it really does. It encompasses everybody. It's not that hard to market your product. Everybody over the age of 21. That's it. That's your audience. And you don't have to go very far to do it. It's beer. We get it. Not too complicated. It's not a special kind of beer. You've just, and they had honestly really cornered the market. They'd really captured the market share for the longest time. But I really do believe it was the response that hurt them even worse. Because then you got into a debate and you clearly took a side. And you didn't, as they said at National Review, you didn't remember who your customer base was.
I will say this, I'm still surprised. I mean, you and I have been doing this a long, long time, and we can look and we can say, okay, if this happens, it's really going to blow up. Sometimes things come out of left field for me, and I'm like, wow. I didn't see that. It
was a rogue wave of a story.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't see that coming, and it's something that you and I have been passionate about for the longest time, the sexism, the misogyny, the promotion of child abuse, as we call it, with the surgeries and hormones for children. That the insanity of what they are promoting there. We've been on it well over a decade, and we've been waiting for the public to finally come up and say, okay, we've had enough.
Yeah.
And I was looking at, there was another issue out there. Somebody come forward to fight something. It wasn't on the liberal transgender activist movement. It was about something else. And they said, look, conservatives need to stop being quiet. And we mean more than the people in power, because we always talk about the fact that, that the leaders, and very few leaders rarely lead. They want to see where the public opinion is, and they'll go with it if they know it's and when you have it, and so I view that, for example, Riley Gaines is a leader now, but she wasn't when she first came out. Right. She's been a victim of it. She became a leader because she said okay, and then you had more people stepping up. Like I said last week, the two liberal feminist organizations finally to stand up and say, enough. What about women's opportunities? How dare men try to decide what the definition of a female is? How insulting is that? How sexist is that? How misogynist is that? When you look at, and now you've got more, I saw the other day a transgender teacher came out and said, look, I'm transgender. There's no way we should be teaching this stuff to 5-year-olds. This is just insanity.
Right.
We know now that there's a split in liberal gay and lesbian organizations in the LGBTQ, because the LGBTQ now, as it's currently written, is basically the liberal. That's why we call it the liberal transgender activist movement, because there are people that believe they are transgender that don't buy into this at all. And you have a tremendous number of, we hear from them, they write to us all the time, that are, that are gay and wish that the transgender movement never became part of their movement.
Right.
And so Riley Gaines helped push that, and now you have feminist organizations, coming out, liberal feminist organizations, and saying, okay, enough is enough. But what really drove it, I think, was Riley Gaines, but then what really put it over the top was the whole Bud Light situation, and frankly, I didn't see that coming, that sometimes you just don't know what the catalyst is to light something off.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so that's why I'm thinking, okay, was it the actual story that was written, or was it her explanation that sent it over the top, that, we're not just going to sell to the frat boys anymore or whatever? It's just...
Well, and I think it was a combination of both, but I really think that the response to it was so thoughtless because it wasn't marketing. You know, if you think about what marketing is in a product that really, again, for everyone 21 and over, that's your audience. Ready? Go. And I think it was, okay, yeah, but we want to get away from this. What do you mean get away from that? Get away from anybody who's legally allowed to purchase and consume your product? Why in the world would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you create enemies in the people that fund your company repeatedly? You don't, most of whom you never have to advertise to.
It's a great point. It is one business where you don't, any other business, you buy a car, you buy a refrigerator, you buy a home, you're going to, your odds are you're not.
You're going to shop.
You're going to shop and look different. But when you start drinking a particular beer, that's the beer that you drink.
Yeah.
You have repeat business that is automatically built in.
The one thing, and that's what I would add to the National Review piece. It's one thing to ignore or carve out part of your customer base. It's another to ignore their loyalty and not recognize
Good point.
their overwhelming loyalty of your product, which is in the numbers that you also fail to see. She's not capable of doing that job and shouldn't have been there, frankly.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. See what Bill Maher said on Friday. Well, they're going to call him a racist. Even if it doesn't make sense or apply, they're probably going to call him a racist. We'll get to that more on the Hunter Biden and Antony Blinken situation. Eric Adams in New York City, the mayor says the city's being destroyed by the president's migrant crisis, and just so much more. We've got, DeSantis and Trump. And the whole COVID attack strategy coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE. He is Eric Harley, and I am Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Coming up here in a little bit, DeSantis versus Trump, and the latest going back and forth. Trump hit DeSantis as Florida being a disaster of a state, which is like, okay, it's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah.
DeSantis shot back at Trump, talking about Fauci's role in the administration's coronavirus response and saying, and this is because Trump attacked him first on COVID and said he was weak. And you and I said, look, early on, every when people didn't know what was going on, people did different things, up front. And when Trump went after DeSantis, you and I both said, we went, whoa, you got to be careful because you were Fauci's boss.
Yeah, right.
In essence, you gave Fauci a free hand. he can come back at you big time. You better be very careful about that, and that's what he did. And we'll get that coming here in just a little bit. Let's get to some of your calls and comments. So everything from the Bud Light situation to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and the Secretary of State and the conversation that he had with Mike Morrell, former head of the CIA, where Mike Morrell testified and said, no, Blinken, well, sorry. This thing all started with him. And at that point, Blinken was working for the campaign. He is now Secretary of State. Let's go to Tim in Hartford, Connecticut. Tim, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Real quick point, and I'll get to Blinken. I figured out the Bud Light Starbucks marketing campaign. It's physics, guys.
Somebody just listening may not understand that because it references to something we talked about last hour, but we found that very funny here.
You got us on that one, Tim. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Tony Blinken, before he was campaign manager for Biden, he was the managing director of the Penn Biden Center.
From 2017 to, I believe, 2019, like beginning of summer 2019. Yeah. When they were getting a lot of the anonymous donations. Yep. Great point.
Yeah, I wonder if he knew where the classified documents were.
No, but Tim, the reason you make that, I'm so glad you called with that because we didn't touch that part of it when we were talking about it earlier, because what it shows is he was involved in the Penn Biden Center, which then puts out the perception that he knew about all these anonymous donations coming in from the Chinese because he was the managing director of it, which then gives the perception or makes investigators question and say, well, how many then knew about Hunter Biden's influence? And then it gets all to the Penn Biden Center, the secret documents there. Well, Hunter, the documents at the House. Well, it opens it up.
Exactly.
Think about that. The guy, basically, who was running the Penn Biden Center, where the first batch of documents was found, is now in charge of classified information.
Right.
Yeah. He's the Secretary of State. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, he's gone from working there, then campaign advisor, to now Secretary of State, the guy who oversees all of our top secrets.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I do think, though, that you're going to see I think you're going to see some pressure this week. I really do, because they can't give any answers, and the Republicans are going to be screaming for answers. But, Tim, one more thing I just want to tell you, that the fact is your physics joke made no sense at all, which is why it was so funny.
It only makes sense if you're a loyal listener.
Right.
That's right.
Thank you so much. You have a great
Tim.
day. All right. Let us go to Patrick in Ohio about the Bragg situation and allowing the ex-prosecutor to testify. Patrick, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi, Patrick.
Howdy.
Hey, how are you today?
Not too bad. You guys were talking about how long it was taking, and all of a sudden he just gave up on it.
Yeah.
You got to remember, the Democrats want to keep control of the timeline on when they put Trump in court. This will throw him off. He didn't have control of the timeline, how long it would take.
Well, no, this had nothing to do with his timeline of court. This is a separate thing with the ex-prosecutor. The next time Trump will be
I understand that, but if he's tied up with that, he can't work on the Trump thing.
Well, he's not tied up with it.
He just said, screw it.
The next time Trump is in is December, and this wouldn't have affected it. I don't believe it would have affected it in any way. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know how, because it's simply, okay, does a prosecutor testify or not? Bragg is not going to personally prosecute Trump. Right. So he's not personally going to be. There's other prosecutors that are going to do that, but
Thanks, Patrick.
Who knows? We'll see. Let us go to Don in Chattanooga, Tennessee about Bud Light. Don, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi, Don.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just tired of them trying to cram the transgender stuff down my throat. It's like we have a family functions at my house all the time, and we usually about 38 family members, and I keep 2 cases of Bud Light in there in my refrigerator in the garage. Well, I was going to restock it, and I got Yuengling because of this, and we've about half of the 38 that come over to the house are drinkers, and they brought other beers besides Bud Light because everybody was a Bud Light drinker then. And I said, why are not? And they said exactly the same thing. I'm tired of this. You're trying to have me accept it. I don't accept it. If they want to dress like that, do that. That's fine. But don't sit there want me to accept it or call them by their assumed name.
No, I understand completely. And we've been waiting here on Red Eye since we've been talking about this for over a decade.
Thanks, Don.
We've been waiting for the pushback to finally come. And again, that's why I have to credit Riley Gaines for doing what she did, for coming out, and because that really helped push this, I believe, in the direction it needed to go. And then the Bud Light thing hit, and boom.
I think really that was the tipping point. I think Don right there, was a great example of what we, probably didn't see coming when we were talking about it earlier. This rogue wave of an issue and how, it seemed to really change the course of that issue. And that is this. It's one thing when we talk about streaming services, right? Because streaming services are Hollywood. And we've kind of gotten used to the agenda coming from Hollywood. And then if it gets too lopsided in one direction, we can cancel our subscription, right? We're not bringing that subscription to our friends, or as Don mentioned, family coming over or whatever, and there's a get-together. But when it reached our beer is when people said, stop. And it's the Al Bundy thing.
How did you know where I was?
You guys have taxed everything. You're going to tax beer? No.
Read my lips.
Man, you have to go back to the early 90s for that one. And that's the difference, is that, the one thing, it's the one thing, right? You get a case of beer or 12-pack, 6-pack, whatever. You take it home, you grab a beer. Hey, you want a beer? Even Obama had a beer summit. Remember the whole Professor Gates?
Yeah, exactly
the
right.
Police officers were acting stupidly.
We have a beer and it brings us together.
That's a beer summit.
That's a great point, though.
It is one of those, and they talk about this. Actually, the very history of ballot type voting and issuing of opinion or choosing things that happened in what were taverns back in the day that started serving coffee. And it was on an episode of Modern Marvels on History. And I thought, coffee, a modern marvel? Well, okay, I drink coffee. I'll watch. And they talked about how, it changed. But there was this socializing around in taverns around beer, basically. Mm-hmm. And then they started introducing coffee. People started having longer conversations. And then they started having, these little, write things down on a piece of paper of what you select, or and it was this the beginning of what would be a ballot type process. Of course, a lot of those ballots were hidden and then burned, and right away there was fraud involved. But it's just kidding, sort of. But this idea of when we get together, it is really kind of with adults. It is that hey, you want a beer? Hey, grab a beer. Here, have a beer. Hey, I think I'm going to have a beer. It's one of those things that I won't say that it brought people together, but it was certainly a centerpiece for many conversations.
No, I think you're
over the years.
I think you're right on. Culturally, it is, and I don't mean just in the commercials. The story I love to tell. My father having the case of Ballantine beer in his basement.
Yeah.
As I said before, my father's 97, never seen him drunk. I don't think I'm going to either.
Right. Yeah.
But never seen him drunk. But once a year, because Mr. Duncan next door is there, because the winters are long, and so you get out there to cut the lawn for the first time. Mr. Duncan would, come out with an ice cold beer for my father. Yeah. And my father got the case of Ballantine in order to reciprocate later on in the summer.
Right.
He would bring the beer to him. But there's a socializing aspect to it.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk about it a lot does not mean it doesn't exist, and it does exist. There is, the socializing around a beer or even a cocktail or whatever is a part of bringing people together. Really
I put it right up there with breaking bread.
I agree with you on that. Yes,
or
supper, or it's a ritual.
If you talk about that, of sitting down with people and because it is, if you say, hey, you want to go to dinner, it really is about the conversation. It's about socializing. Hey, you want to have a beer? It's about socializing. And when they were going to bring that into it, that felt invasive. Because what you were doing
I like where this is going.
As a company, you weren't just you went from supplying the centerpiece to controlling the conversation that you had no part in.
I like it,
and I think that's where that line always will be.
I think these are totally great points,
and I think this marketing person, and it really, I assume there are other people involved in it, but she made the decision again to cut in and say we're going to change the conversation, and Starbucks did the same thing.
Or we're going to lead the conversation.
Yeah. And Starbucks did the same thing. The morning ritual of coffee goes back ages. And then when you talk about the conversation, hey, you want to sit down for a cup of coffee? It wasn't about the coffee.
No, it wasn't.
And we're going to not only be the centerpiece, we're going to move away from being the centerpiece to controlling and leading the conversation that they had no part in.
And I think it's a great point when you talk about the beer. It's the same kind of cultural thing. Let's have a beer. There's camaraderie behind it. There's socializing behind it. There's how are you doing? There's
deals made.
There's the respect level.
Yep.
Hey, I saw you're all cutting. How you doing? Haven't seen you all winter long. I think about my dad and that little ritual. Yeah. And my dad really wasn't a drinker, but the beer was an important part of it.
Yep.
Of the imagery. Now, you did bring up the best point of all, that the Married with Children, Al Bundy, Don't Tax Beer episode, which was, I believe, the best ever, because he gave the greatest populist speech ever in existence. No politician has given a better populist speech than Al Bundy gave on after the beer tax was actually I don't see, was it? Yeah, it was passed.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, they rioted and pillaged, and so then they retracted the beer tax. Yeah. But when he was talking about wine drinkers and the fancy food they ate while cavorting with their beautiful second wives, while we beer drinkers were breeding with peasant stock, and
right?
He looks and goes, "Sorry, Peg."
Yeah.
Oh man, there's some of the best stuff there. 866-90 Red Eye.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. To determine a driver's compliance, safety, accountability, or CSA score, safety event data is recorded and compared against that of other drivers. Drivers are given a CSA score, but unlike motor carrier scores, driver scores are only visible to enforcement officers during an audit. However, drivers' most recent 5 years of crash data and 3 years of roadside inspection data is made available to potential employers via the pre-employment screening program. So it's a good idea for drivers to review their online PSP record from time to time. A request for data review can be submitted via data queues to have errors corrected or to have a non-preventable crash designation indicated for a crash. In the event a current or previous carrier is audited, records on drivers with high CSA scores will be targeted first, but individual drivers are not subject to CSA interventions like motor carriers. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 86690 Red Eye. So is a leave of absence just a way to, I don't know, sort of have a soft landing on all of this? You didn't fire her, which would have ticked off the left. She's just on a leave of absence, and then she just sort of disappears.
Yeah, it's probably the softest landing, but I think even more so you look at it from the standpoint that where we just broke it down, and that is if you don't have a clear understanding of your very loyal customer base, then you don't have a place in marketing for the product. That is that's number one in product knowledge, and product knowledge is the key. You know, you have to understand who is drinking it, and then beyond that, or consuming it, and beyond that, find out who is not. You know, and that gets into market share stuff, and you go from there. But you never alienate anyone. Everyone over 21 is your audience, and that's how you market it.
Is a potential customer.
Yep. And it's all about the product.
Well, you never know. I mean, Starbucks brought back Howard Schultz,
right?
And he made a ton of massive errors.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I don't know.
But I
it'd be
think,
interesting to see
I
what
think
Bud Light
with,
does.
with that, it's a company who just keeps hitting that wall, or point that we talk about, the liberal circular firing squad. You think you're going to do something good, and then you just keep hitting a wall, and you wonder why.
And think about this, because Howard Schultz was a liberal darling for everything that he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
From gun control to saying, well, not just customers can use the store, anybody can come in, and then the whole race thing, and basically had to back off on all of them.
Right.
To the point now where the biggest controversy when you talk about Starbucks, Starbucks is known as the union-busting company.
Yeah,
think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how bizarre it gets so quickly.
Right.
And he was a liberal darling, and no longer is he the liberal darling.
No.
Because you can't, the problem is it's tough to go halfway. You can't sit there today and say, well, let's publicly come out and take political opinions and try to appease both sides. It's never going to work.
It's not going to work.
You simply don't get involved in the arguments.
Right.
Not up to us.
That's it.
We sell beer. We want everybody to drink our beer.
Right.
Even Trump supporters. Yes.
Everyone.
Nazis.
The show that got you through Biden's nuclear winter you have so far. Good luck. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 86690 Red Eye. On Friday's broadcast of MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell reports, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry stated that wind and solar will become far more price competitive than oil and gas if oil and gas companies see their cost rise.
Under my plan of cap and trade, electricity rates will necessarily skyrocket, Barack Obama.
Yep. So that's how you make solar and wind more competitive.
Yeah.
Is you raise the cost of oil and gas, and which will skyrocket electricity prices,
right,
as we all know. And solar and wind becomes more competitive. So massive inflation on energy prices is the solution to you having a better quality of life.
That's how it works.
Wow. It's amazing. It's like, shut up. I'm sorry, just shut up.
Well, and because
Man, just
the one thing that the left has been dying to get their hands on in terms of nationalizing any massive part of the economy, aside from healthcare, it's energy. And you make it cost prohibitive while you're ushering in what you call renewable energy. Now, over and over again, we show you these green companies that can't survive without government money. Some of them can't survive with government money. So it requires the government to be present in the operations, in the funding, in the regulations, all along the way. If it is to work, it definitely is a strong path to nationalizing energy. It is the greatest shot that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And all you got to do is make it cool to have an EV.
Well, that's going to be tough.
Well, it's going to be tough when, again, prices keep going up and up and up and up and up. And we'll get to that eventually. Never mind the recent drop in costs with Tesla. Look at all the other automakers, EV makers, and the costs that they're seeing. And look at how they are, again, pushing for more government money to be a part of it, because they understand that you absolutely cannot produce them on the level that would be required per the mandates that they have set forth without massive amounts of government money.
AOC and other Democrats now out there promoting the Green New Deal again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just every single day. You just can't imagine. You just go, wow, I thought they'd probably drop that. No, let's come back with that now. With inflation going on, now let's propose basically nationalizing, because that's what you'd have to get to in the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
You'd have to nationalize all major companies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was brought up way back when she had endorsed it. Then they dropped it, and I'm thinking, you bring it up now? You bring up the Green Deal now, a year and a half before the elections? Really? This is what you want to sell the American public? John Kerry out there talking about how electricity prices have to go up more.
Yeah.
How oil and natural gas has to go up more in order to make everything competitive. All they're talking about now is raising the prices of the things that the people need the most. Yeah. And then with the Green New Deal, as we know, because no one, you're going to these companies with these mandates that you would be put on with the Green New Deal. We've already discussed this because they talk about the fact, I love this over the weekend. I got to find, who said, I just popped out of my mind. Somebody said, well, the 90 million or the 90 trillion is really nothing compared to those costs will be cheaper than if we don't spend that money.
Yeah.
We don't have 90 trillion to spend on climate change.
It's a cost savings.
It's not, it's not there. I mean, they're just, the more we get, the more I think they suspect they're going to lose, the more insane they become to promote insane ideas. But as we stated before, all these companies, if you sat there and went, okay, all automobile companies must produce electric vehicles, and that's how it goes. Well, their size is going to crash the size of the company that they are.
Oh, yeah.
Because people can't afford it. And if they mandate everything else with the high electricity prices that will come with it and everything else, people aren't going to be able to afford cars. They will destroy the automobile industry. And so stockholders are going to abandon them. The government would have to buy them.
And that's exactly the plan. That's exactly what will happen, because no one will want to invest in something that's not profitable. We already see that with traditional forms of energy in states like Texas. Because if it has already been shown that the mandates require this, then your investment is going to fall short.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to invest in the traditional forms of energy because they won't be profitable because the government won't allow it through regulations. It's not going to be allowed. There is no future there based on the regulations. Well, when there's no investment, and the only investment that you have on solar, wind, and EVs requires massive amounts of government money, you're already halfway there. Nationalizing energy is just around the corner if we allow it. There won't be the private sector investment. There won't.
Well, you're seeing it right now. You're seeing it in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And the word coming out last week that government would have to subsidize, think about this, because this is how insane it gets. So Texas doesn't have what it had before with free Zola.
Right.
We now have to subsidize the federal government. This is insane. The federal government will be subsidizing solar and wind. That's what they've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the states need to ensure that the grid actually works for its citizens. The federal government doesn't give a damn about that. We're just going to give all this money and build solar and wind.
Right.
So the state of Texas is saying, okay, the taxpayer is going to have to partially subsidize
the backup.
The backup, which is natural gas, which doesn't need any subsidies if it was the primary form of energy, and then the rest will be increased costs to the taxpayer. So we have to subsidize everything across the board or to the customer. But basically, it becomes de facto government controlled because all the subsidies from the federal government and the state government are controlling all of the power resources for the grid.
Yeah.
So you're already getting there. You're getting as close to nationalization as you can get in a free economy, which is everything is massively subsidized by the government.
Right.
For no reason, because you don't solve the problem. You don't solve the problem that you claim is happening.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. It's like it just keeps getting more insane every day. Just wow.
That plan in Texas will ensure that the green plan goes forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't on the backup. You can't let it fail as a state. Federal government, as you mentioned, they don't care. On the federal level, they don't care. So the state has to make it seamless, which is even more expensive, which means that no one will ever know the shortfall of wind and solar. You won't be able to tell because the backup will be there.
Right, and the backup will be natural
And if you
gas,
don't see the shortfall, you don't see the problem with it, you're just going to be paying through the nose.
It's funny because the federal government is basically living in the delusional world. We can run everything by solar and wind.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to, they're not telling you the whole story. They're not coming in saying, look, we have to subsidize solar and wind. But since we're subsidizing, solar and wind, we understand that it has to be more expensive because natural gas can beat it like crazy, but we wish to save the planet.
Right.
So we need to subsidize solar and wind, but we understand that solar and wind can't run 24/7. It's an inconsistent form of energy. So the federal government will also subsidize the backup of it. They're just forgetting it and leaving that to the states. We're going to be delusional and have a plan that would destroy the grid, and the state's going to have to fix all the problems that's caused because of it, and subsidize, as you just said, natural gas backups, which will keep the green energy going.
Yep.
Because everything then across the board is subsidized.
Enormously expensive, and it will never fail, so you'll never see the shortcomings of wind and solar.
And then what we get is then you'll be charged your utility costs based on your income, not your usage.
Yes.
So it will become a true welfare.
And by introducing that part of it recently, they admit it's enormously expensive. It will break the poor and the middle class.
Right. Wow. Shaking my head.
And we're here. It's here.
It's happening. Yeah, it's happening now.
It's not going to reverse.
Nope.
Good luck.
That's the insanity this is pure nuts. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. I saw that Elon Musk pulled back, and he's no longer going to have state-sponsored media or state-funded media.
Yeah, the labels.
Those labels are now gone.
Put on there, yeah.
And then is he giving blue check marks to some celebrities now?
Yeah, at first it was only a few. He apparently had, the report is that he personally paid for Stephen King's blue checkmark, subscription to Twitter Blue. And Stephen King came out and said, look, it says my blue check, telling his followers, it says my blue check is there because I subscribe. I did not pay for a subscription. And Elon Musk responded, you're welcome. And then it came out over the weekend that he's giving that back. He's given the blue check back to a number of big celebrities. The whole group of them. It's a lot of them. I don't know if there's a threshold on followers or not. I subscribed to Twitter Blue last month in March. At first I wasn't going to, and I don't know if I'm going to stay. But there are things that I work with our marketing team on that looked pretty promising based on the way they've laid it out and publishing content and everything else on Twitter, which is something Facebook promised and didn't. They didn't keep that promise long term. They actually pulled that and changed the way the exposure that media companies get in terms of your newsfeed. It changed drastically, in fact, on Facebook. We don't know where it's going with Twitter. But I jumped on Twitter Blue. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay. We'll see where it goes on, what they're going to do on content. I don't see, if it were just my page, I don't see the value in it. On the personal level, I don't see any value in it.
Well, I just see that he's going through trial and error because he jumps on one thing for a couple of days, gets bad feedback, and then changes it, and he's done that a number of times just in the last week. A lot.
It just, because then now the pushback, if you're handing celebrities their blue check again and they're not paying, then you're saying the elite don't have to pay. And you're also acknowledging their argument, and their argument was, hey, I think Bette Midler posted something like, I bring a lot of people to, because she's got, I don't know how many followers, but she's got a lot of. And then, and so you've got a lot of celebrities, that will tell you, look, people come here to follow me. Look at my following. I've got, 2 million, 4 million, whatever followers. And so I add to your platform by bringing people here every day. You can definitely, or up to, January of 2021, make the case for Donald Trump and that, make that case for Donald Trump. I don't know about those other celebrities, but there will be the pushback. Hey, they're not having to pay. Why am I having to pay?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.